just give it a minute.
What's your passcode? Tell me your passcode. What the hell does this mean? Mute your phone. Basics. Keep it muted.
We are now live on Facebook. तर प्रियाताई तुम्ही चालू करू शकता.
ओके. नमस्कार मंडळी, नमस्कार, सुस्वागतम. Bienvenuta, Welcome, Dobro Pozalovat, Receber, Bienvenidas. हुश. मला तुमच्या चेहऱ्यावर ना मोठा प्रश्नचिन्ह दिसतोय की हा कार्यक्रम मराठीत असताना मी या विदेशी भाषांमध्ये का बरं तुमचं स्वागत करतेय. हेच सांगायला की ह्या 4-5 भाषांमधले फक्त एक शब्द स्वागत हा पाठ करण्याचा नुसता मी प्रयत्न करताना माझा दम निघाला बघा. पाठ झाले नाहीतच आणि उच्चार काय अफलातून आले असतील हा मुद्दा वेगळाच. पण आपल्या बरोबर आज जी आपली मैत्रीण गप्पा मारायला आली आहे ना, ती 1 नाही 2 नाही तब्बल भाषा बोलते. हे तर तुम्हाला आता माहिती आहे आमच्या त्या फेसबुकच्या ऍडवरनं. पण पिक्चर अभी बाकी है मेरे दोस्तों, दिल थांब कर बैठिए. तिला 22 भाषा येत नाहीत फक्त, तिला 22 अधिक 22 किती झाले 44 भाषा येतात. हो, तुम्ही अगदी बरोबर आकडा ऐकलाय. ती 44 भाषांमध्ये प्रवीण आहे. थक्क झालात ना हे सगळं ऐकून? तर आता आपण संकेश्वरी हिच्याशीच गप्पा मारूया आणि तिलाच विचारूया की तिचा हा भाषेबरोबरचा प्रवास कसा सुरू झाला, तिला ही अशी आवड कशी निर्माण झाली. तर आपण तिला बोलूया. नमस्कार संकेश्वरी. वेलकम टू द प्रोग्राम. आणि आम्हाला इतका आनंद होतोय तुला आज इकडे बघून आणि तुझ्याशी खूप गप्पा मारायच्या अगदी आम्ही सगळे उत्सुक आहोत. तर आता तूच सांग की तुझा हा आगळा वेगळा, म्हणजे मला तर वाटतं रेकॉर्ड ब्रेकिंगच ती कधी सुरू झाली केव्हा. आणि सो इगर आणि वेलकम.
Thank you so much. And hi everybody. माझा हे first time actually speaking to an Indian audience session आहे. कारण एवढे सगळे foreign languages आल्यावरती mostly audience किंवा speaker sessions जेव्हा होतात तेव्हा सगळे लोक इतके वेगवेगळे languages बोलत असतात की आज पहिल्यांदा इतकं non-stop मराठी मधला हे session आहे. So yeah, I'm quite excited. So thank you for having me. And I will definitely share my journey, how I started, एवढे सगळे languages कधी शिकली, काय, आता मी काय करते सगळं. But I'm sure की तुम्ही सगळे curious आहात की हे 22 languages काय आहेत, और 22 आणि 22, कसं आहे. मग त्याच्यात Indian languages किती आहेत, foreign किती आहेत आणि काय काय. So let me just do like a big reveal with you all before मी सगळं share करीन. So मी पटकन माझं screen share करणार आहे just for you all to see. Let me know तुम्हाला सगळं दिसतंय, screen दिसते तेव्हा.
हो दिसते.
So this is exactly welcome and all those words that you just heard are some of them on the screen. And this would be the languages that I am currently proficient with. So 22 जे left hand side ला दिसतात ते सगळे languages. For the big reveal मला येतात सगळे foreign languages आहेत. मधल्या column मध्ये जे आहेत इंग्लिश, हिंदी, मराठी, गुजराती. Of course बॉम्बे मधून असल्यामुळे मला ते languages तर येतातच आणि ते इंडियन लँग्वेजेस मध्ये कव्हर होतात. आणि राईट साइडला जे लँग्वेजेस आहेत 22 त्याच्यावरती मी काम केलंय. और इन द पास्ट मी त्याच्यावरती लिंग्विस्टिक चेक्स केले आहेत किंवा कोणी ट्रान्सलेशन केलं असेल ते चेक केलंय. मे बी सम कलिग्सना हेल्प केलंय, सम ऍडव्हर्टायझिंग कॅम्पेन्स बनवलेत. सो त्याच्यावरती काम केलेलं आहे. ते समजतात, लिहिता वाचता येतात, पण त्याच्यात बोलता येत नाही बिकॉज ऑब्व्हियसली प्रॅक्टिस नाहीये. सेकंडली ते लँग्वेजेस प्रोफेशनली स्टडी नाही केले जसे हे केले या फर्स्ट कॉलम मधले जे 22 आहेत. आणि ऑल्सो कुठेतरी ते लँग्वेजेस स्लोली इधर त्याच्या कामात त्याचं कनेक्शन लूज झालंय और आता ते रोजच्या वापरामध्ये नाहीये. So these are the 22 languages that you see, all foreign languages from Basque, Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, Portugal, Dutch, Spanish, etc. आणि हे सगळे लँग्वेजेस मी लिटरली एव्हरी सिंगल डे वापरते कामासाठी, लोकांशी बोलायला आणि काही पण समटाइम्स वेदर इट इज कोणाला शिकवायला, कधी काही कॉन्फरन्स मध्ये बोलायचं, सडनली एक स्पीकर आला आणि त्यांना इंग्लिश येत नाही, देन आय वुड बी युजिंग ऑल ऑफ दीज लँग्वेजेस. So that is the big reveal of the 22 plus 22 आणि मधले 4. आणि yeah, I mean now I think now that you have seen this, I have a question for all of you. So just quickly, कोणी पण, do you all know how many languages are in the world today?
100
like a wild guess.
More than 100?
More than 100, yes, but it's actually more than 1,000. So yeah, it is. So I'll just let you guess. So just a random number.
3,000.
Even more. Okay, I will share. So there are 7,139 languages in the world, and these are as of 2021. So before 2021, खूप languages होते, जे maybe extinct झाले आहेत, or people are not studying, किंवा they're not teaching the next generation, so ते नाही बोलले जात. And that's about 3,000, maybe 100, 200 languages. So with these 7,139, I have a long way to go before, मी सगळे languages शिकीन, or not definitely सगळे, पण a lot more, but that is the number. So आपल्याला समजत पण नाही, or idea पण नसते की किती languages world मध्ये आहेत. आणि coming from a country like India, जिकडे एवढे सगळे languages बोलतात, just in every single city, state, at a national level, this is like a phenomenal number all over the world होतात. And one fun fact is हे जे सगळे languages, the 7,200 approximate numbers आहे, त्याच्यामधले maximum languages बोलले जातात in a country which is so small you can't even imagine, and that is Papua New Guinea. So they have the maximum languages in the world. And after Papua New Guinea, the next country that follows that is Indonesia. So त्यांचे जे dialects आहेत, which is counted as one language, is almost close to Papua New Guinea, followed by India, and मग नंतर there's US, Australia, and a few other countries. Of course, China is also on the list. I just don't remember on what number. So all of these, it's like there's so much more की किती languages शिकायचे, कुठे काय कसं वापरतात. आणि I will, as just like before I get on to how I work or everything, I would like to even ask you ki he je other languages which I mentioned, countries that I mentioned, त्याच्यानंतर can you guess what is the most spoken language in the world?
French.
No, it's an Asian language.
Hindi.
Chinese, but Hindi is on the list. So Chinese, simplified, is the most spoken language. And this is by native speakers, right? So normally जेव्हा every year survey करतात, they check करतात की native speakers किती आहेत for a language, and not people like me. For example, I speak many languages, but Chinese, French, Spanish is not my native language, so I'm not counted in that population. मग त्याच्यामध्ये Chinese आहे. Second language is Spanish, कारण that has always been the top language, which has gone down over the last 2 years, and Chinese overtook it. Third language is English, and fourth language is Hindi. So that's for like native speakers, and people like me, or many people on this Zoom call जे खूप languages बोलतात, Hindi, Marathi, English for sure. तसं जे non-native speakers आहेत, त्याच्यामध्ये English still is the most widely spoken language. मग second आहे Chinese, Hindi, आणि मग Spanish आहे ह्या languages मध्ये. So Hindi speakers, the percentage has gone up a lot over the last 2 to 3 years, making it one really, highlighted languages in the world today. So Adi, they would have Telugu. Current Telugu was spoken very widely because a lot of people migrated to the US and they were speaking that language. But now it has become Hindi over all the other languages. And I'm going to share with you all also just a quick slide to see kuche languages. Do you all see my slide?
Oh.
Okay, so on the right side, you see English, Chinese, Hindi, and then all the other languages follow. this year we have a lot of Indian languages. So most of you might even have this question, ki मी foreign languages ka learn केले जेव्हा there were all so many Indian languages, right? Because back then Indian languages na तेवढा scope नव्हता. And how the scope is decided is how many people use those languages, ki कुठचे products साठी, or whether it is used in software, technology, even consumer products like FMCG vagare. So over years it has evolved, and as Indians and Chinese of course are the biggest population in the world, it's also migrate karta to other parts of the world. Indian languages, the requirement is getting more and more, and it is increasing by a couple of months rather than a year. So this last year, you see Telugu is on the list, Marathi is on the list. Marathi was nowhere on the list. It was not a language ji shikli jate as a subject outside of school. It's extremely rare ki somebody says mala Marathi shikaयचं आहे आणि ते येतात, किंवा मला Telugu shikaयचं आहे आणि ते class karun shiktat. So these are like some interesting facts which have happened, and moreover because of COVID and people had the opportunity to stay at home and even practice their own mother tongue. For me too, having Marathi as my mother tongue, I only use it जेव्हा घरी बोलायचं असतं, but beyond that even friends बरोबर नाही बोलले जात, किंवा कामासाठी खूप rarely, I think maybe a few years ago कुठच्या project मध्ये वापरली असेल. So जरी हे सगळे languages you see and you feel like wow, this is amazing, but what you see here is on a speaker level basis and not on how they're leveraged कुठे पण websites वरती किंवा phone वरती and all of that. So
तू पहिली भाषा कुठली शिकलीस अंकेश्वरी, म्हणजे आणि कधी?
मी सगळ्यात पहिली भाषा शिकलेली फ्रेंच. Okay, so that is again a fun story, and I'm gonna just put this screen for you all to see before that. So I started when I was 16 years old. That's my full-time professional language translator, right? And त्याच्यासाठी minimum you need 4 to 4.5 years कुठची पण language एकदम fluently आणि professionally use करायला. So French जी मी language शिकलेली, the story starts such की I was in between the 6th and 7th standard holidays, आणि तेव्हा there was no Tata Sky, cable असायचं, तिकडे खालती अशी ad यायचे, कोणाला पण advertise करायचं असेल लोकल एरियामध्ये, आईस्क्रीम, ग्रोसरीज वगैरे काय काय, त्याच्यात एक ad आली होती French tuitions. आणि I saw that and I told my mom की मला ह्या क्लासमध्ये जायचंय, I want to learn French. So because it was a hobby class तेव्हा किंवा tuitions class असेल आणि the teacher was advertising, we went की let's see ती मला admit करेल की नाही क्लासमध्ये. आणि गेलो, because I was underage, she met me आणि तिने सांगितलं नाही अजून तू खूप लहान आहेस, to study a language थोडं काहीतरी फाउंडेशन लागतं, सो जेव्हा स्कूलमध्ये फ्रेंच आहे तेव्हा तू ये आणि मग I will teach you French. So I said, oh, but I really want to learn, and I was very excited about learning a new language the way that was advertised खालती. मग she said ठीक आहे 2 दिवस ये try करू, काही books वगैरे नको घेऊस. And then she told my mom, let's see, just because I was so curious about learning it. But after 2 days of learning, she said, just get admission and you're going to study French. For that age, even before school मध्ये ती language introduced झाली होती, it was very early on. And I was studying like 8th, 9th, 10th standards syllabus जे school मध्ये होतं. And I was getting good at it. So त्या holiday, like 1.5 months holiday मध्ये, मी already 2 years the syllabus and she was very excited, right? And I was so happy ki itka asam not like I had any friends just study karat hote or anybody in the family who was into foreign languages. So it was like a very fun, exciting thing for me. And that was very limited to the holiday, after which I forgot about it. Current, there's still 2 more years to go before school मध्ये introduce केलं. Mug in the meanwhile, there was this association French citizens na or French nationals na India madhe, when they travel, they let you stay with family. So it's kind of like a student exchange, but more for cultural purposes. So they families jeva we used to host, we would either host a couple or couple with kids, and I got that opportunity to speak with them. So jeva mi त्यांच्या बरोबर बोलायला लागली, मग I got that confidence, त्यांना समजतंय आणि मला समजतंय, आणि we could speak at length, म्हणजे इतकं easily की जसं मी English बोलत होती, आणि this was very early too. even they were fascinated. Wow, India मध्ये आलो and somebody speaks French, just like a kid speaking French. So that gave me a little bit more confidence that yes, I was good at it. And mummy असं decide केलं, since I was going to take it up in school, कारण मला ती language आवडायची, then let's see where it goes. मग स्कूल मध्ये केलं 8th, 9th, 10th मध्ये. Of course, I was fantastic कारण माझं already syllabus झालं.
येतच होतं.
येतच होतं. आणि मग I decided की this is good. मग कॉलेजमध्ये गेल्यावरती I said काहीतरी I need to do something more. So one of my friend's sister was studying at Alliance Française, which is the French school. आणि I had heard about it, but I didn't know, परत age was a factor because at 16 years, they परत admission देतील का नाही. आणि we checked and they said, yes, I mean, 16 years is our, admission age. They also take children. And then I took 2 friends and I said, let's go. And in the end, my friends dropped off. We're studying it in college. Then I said, no, I have to go. And there was a lot of excitement about, itka travel karun jayche. Like I used to stay at Dadar. So Dadar to Cuff Parade, And again, I was the youngest in the class, mostly professionals. So hey, classes ratri astat, either 6 to 8 or 8 to 10. So all of this was like also an introduction into a little bit of a corporate culture. So again, office people coming and they study karta. So that started. With Alliance, I was again doing so good ki I continued it for all 2.5 years. Maza diploma zala. And then I had decided ki I'm going to continue doing this. And जेव्हा I was doing this 11th, 12th मध्ये तेव्हा मी already school children चे tuitions चालू केले होते. So SSC board, CBSE, ICSE सगळे. I was even more confident की नाही, I'm really good with languages. पण पुढे काय, because काहीच idea नव्हती. Translator was the only thing in the vision. Okay, this is a go-to profession in the future. मग ठीक आहे, ते झालं, ट्युशन्स घेत होती, कॉन्फिडन्स started getting better. आणि मग one day मी जिकडे ट्युशन्सला जायची फ्रेंचच्या when I was in school, त्या टीचरनी मला सांगितलं, संकेश्वरी तुला फ्रेंच ट्रान्सलेशन करायचंय का? And I was like, yes, very excited. 16 years or like under 18, they don't give any translations. And I said, yes, I would love to. Mag tini सांगितलं, बघ, I cannot officially employ you, Karan, you're still young, so you collaborate with me. So I said, excellent, fantastic opportunity. And that was my first translation for Sony, which I collaborated with her, which is very technical. And it got approved like in one shot. Main tani kai changes as proposed now ke. So that was my trigger point. Yes, I want to become a translator, and I have like already ventured in there. So I worked with my teacher for about 1.5 years. Chote translation jobs thi dechi. And at the same time, Alliance challela complete jhala. And I was ready. I started doing thode interpretations because then the confidence level got much further to a better level. Ki aata mala bolta padeta, just not retry. And interpretations was another amazing opportunity. Because I have interpreted for like big corporates, delegations, a lot of journalists, international journalists, a lot of actors in Bollywood, current journalists, interviews. So all really fun experiences. And as an 18-year-old, it was very exciting. To go and do all this. So I still remember, college aside until 3 o'clock, I had to rush for Alliance Techanantar. And I was doing all these things on the sideline. That all my friends would always wonder, why is she always running? Like, why can't she stay back to have fun? So I had like these limited 2 days where, I could do all the fun things with my friends. And in Baki things, I was like, no, I need to do this because there's a timeline for it. And I wanted to focus on that. So through all of this also, one good thing happened is just right after college, they were in the holidays, mala a company, a Lionbridge, that was actually my first job. Then he approached for a freelance assignment, some, quality assurance checks hote, the engineers na sangaitha ki he screen ha language madhe correct hai ka nahi. Again, that was a fun thing, and I was just going few days a week, project some blah. Mug, they offered like this opportunity, full-time job chi. And graduation finished. So I said, yeah, sure. Mug, taking that on. And there they said that, this is like a role je first time ami karto hai. And translation had then progressed to localization. So localization is a little bit like you cater to the local market, which is beyond translation. So you see what are other requisites je lagtil. Manje, if you want to localize Singapore साठी, maybe you will use some colors je Singapore la more favorable आहेत, or एक दोन Singlish words टाकले, people feel more connected. So that. And I said, yeah, sure, I would love to. Mag join केलं आणि मग 1 week मध्ये they said, well, इकडे हा role नाही आहे, म्हणजे existing role nahi hai. So how would you like to go to France? And I said, sure, I was like, yes. Yeah, I mean, good opportunity. So that happened. Then I went to France and I learned everything about localization from there, how big that industry is, and kitty exposure. I mean, from being a translator, of course, it is a big deal that you translate in French. I mean, while, I was doing all of this, I was studying Spanish, Italian, Japanese, Chinese. He sagan mi, simultaneously जेव्हा पण holidays असायचे तेव्हा cover केलेले languages. So I really wanted to go full-fledged into that. And it was also interesting to see how developed it was in those countries, तिकडे Europe मध्ये versus India मध्ये तेव्हा लोकांना फक्त translation माहिती होतं आणि काहीच languages जे करतात. मग I learned everything आणि मग तिकडनं I came back आणि इथे project transition केला. And surprisingly, that project was Google Translate. So that's where we started. And I'm sure all of us have used Google Translate kadhitari jeva translations vaparto. So that Google Translate's basic fundamental or how it works is ek word apan takto or ek sentence takto and the background, Google, that machine, it's called a machine translation. So that engine, what it does, they words match karta. So out of 10 words, आतमध्ये already 5-6 words feed केलेले असतात. आणि मग ते just rearrange करतं आणि देतं. So suppose you say something like, hi, today is a great day. आणि मग ते मराठीत translate करायचं असेल. तर मराठी त्याच्याकडे तेवढंच असेल, hi or like namaskar as and divas ahe, and they wouldn't know great's a translation. So it would get jumbled up. In some languages, खूप funny results. As I will say, I'm going to the garden, and your food is ready in French or in Spanish. Or my mother is going to cook dinner, and te sangel, what did you do in office today? Ashe translations. So fixing that, and that was interesting because there's 44 languages to exposure. That's how it started there, where maximum language exposure miala. And over time it just went on and new projects aale. I got into more technical projects, thoda technical language shikaila miali or terminology shikaila miali. And French, of course, was very fluent and excellent. Next language shikli hoti was Spanish and it use karaychi hoti. So at work, thoda use hota jeva projects astat, but bolayla pahije tar compulsory konitari everyday practice sari. So then I started teaching at Ruya College. They had a foreign language center. And because I was from Ruya, then my professor approached and she said, Sankeshwari, why don't you teach weekends lahe? And I said, yeah, sure, that's good. And that was like another, experience from 8-year-old to 85-year-old students in the same class. So trying to work with them, then teaching them those languages, the language Spanish, and काही Marathi medium ची मुलं होती. So त्यांना even English they were struggling with it when they go to college 11th, 12th मध्ये. Mug that helped them because I could explain a little bit in Marathi ki how do you relate to these words किंवा grammar कसं related आहे किंवा नाही आहे. And compared to French, Spanish is a language जी very, I wouldn't say very syllabic, but French you read something, you pronounce it completely different. And Spanish is like, okay, very, very close to what you would see. So on this slide, I have one image there, Khalti under tag that says Espanol. So it's very close to what you say. Only the N is like N sound. So it's Espanol. And very, very easy to pronounce. Mug, it started getting more and more popular. Khub students, like a batch was like 65, 85 students. So that another level of, yes, I can practice with so many people and I teach more people. So that got to a level of confidence ki he karta yeta. And at that time,
तुझा ऍक्च्युअल डिग्री इकॉनॉमिक्स मध्ये, मास्टर्स इन इकॉनॉमिक्स, मग तुला लिंग्विस्टिक्स मध्ये ग्रॅज्युएशन किंवा असं, किंवा हाऊ डज इट हेल्प यू, म्हणजे इकॉनॉमिक्स आणि हे डज इट हेल्प इच अदर की व्हॉट वॉज द, म्हणजे
No, so it's not related at all, okay? आणि जेव्हा, like I said, पहिले मला हे पण माहिती नव्हतं की I want to be a translator for sure. म्हणजे I want to be, but can I be? Like, is it possible? Because त्याचं career prospects काय होते, opportunities काहीच माहिती नव्हतं. So, you know, economics was something which is bankable. It's a good degree. It's a good subject. आणि कधी ह्याच्यात नाही झालं तर economics I will always get a job. So that was the thing. And I even did my master's in economics. So even though I was doing these languages, I said, okay, but I don't know pude kiti scope hai. Today I see and I have this exposure, but what if, you know, everything becomes like a machine operated system and you get machine translation just advances and humans are just required to do a check. Then what happens to me, you know, because I was still at the translator level. But that was more like a safety net for me to study economics. And it helped in a way because when I advanced, like from the job at Lionbridge to Cisco मध्ये जेव्हा गेली तेव्हा I was a program manager. So business wise, you know, I did a little bit of business analysis तिकडे, किंवा जेव्हा मी माझं स्वतःचे टीम सेटअप करायची, how do I do that? मग बाकी टीम्स बरोबर काम करायचंय, so going to them आणि pitch करायचं, we do translations, so आमच्याकडे या, तुम्हाला काही हवं असेल वगैरे. तर त्या ह्याच्यात थोडंसं, you know, that business part of economics helps, but not the very academic part. I didn't really use it much. So yeah, and of course, you know, with all of this, most of the roles, or I would say all of the roles that I've had in this whole career journey are created roles. Current most companies मध्ये हे existing roles नसतात. So when a company decides to hire us like one person ज्याला असे multiple languages येतात, किंवा to improve customer experience, websites असतील, त्यांचं software असेल वगैरे, तो role एकतर 1 किंवा maximum 2 लोक असतात टीम मध्ये. For one is for Europe and Asia Pacific, and one US, or one managing all, which I'm doing right now. Current to have that skill सगळ्या ह्याच्यामध्ये at the same level of consistency, same level of interest, सगळं काम करायला, you have to be that capable. And there are very few people in the world, probably like 2 to 5% लोक आहेत जे असं काम करतात at a very consistent rate. So that also means ki continuously, you know, language मध्ये touch असला पाहिजे, latest happenings in all industries. Current I moved from like telecom, and then I moved a little bit into advertising for a bit, for 2-3 years. मग ते माहिती असलं पाहिजे, मग censorship laws काय असतात, कारण it's not just language कळली पाहिजे, you should know कुठच्या country मध्ये काय नाही allowed आहे. जसं for example मलेशियामध्ये जेव्हा deodorant ads असतात, you can't show the armpits, so you cannot show underarms, it's banned. And you can't show dogs in any ads unless it's for म्हणजे डॉग फूड असेल तरी मोस्टली ते कॅट फूड, ते कॅट अँड डॉग असं दाखवतात, किंवा they avoid the image. So these are things which are censorship laws that you should know. And that's another aspect, you know, you slowly learn kiti different branches ahead with just this language learning. So that happened. And also some very interesting things is ads मध्ये जेव्हा you use all these talents, जे voice overs असतात, ते वेगवेगळ्या लँग्वेजेस मध्ये जेव्हा वापरतो, तर इंग्लिश मध्ये सपोज मेल व्हॉइस असेल, मग लेट्स से इफ यू आर वर्किंग इन अ कंट्री ज्याच्यात जास्ती फिमेल डॉमिनन्स आहे, मग इफ यू यूज दॅट फिमेल व्हॉइस, इट्स मोर, पीपल आर मोर रिसेप्टिव्ह. सो हे सगळं, यू नो, टू अंडरस्टँड ऑल ऑफ दिस. आणि that's called cultural consultation. So you have to study culture त्या कंट्रीचं, not just the language. मग फूड किंवा कुठच्या ऍड मध्ये काय दाखवताय, त्या टेबलवर काय असलं पाहिजे, then they consult you. की सपोज मी इंडियामध्ये ऍड लॉन्च करते, तर मग मी मीट ठेवायचं का व्हेजिटेरियन फूड, जास्ती काय people would be
Accepted.
more, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things like are interesting parts of what I do, and every day it's a new learning की okay आज हे वाचलं मग आज ते वाचलं मग आता इकडे हे अप्लाय करायचंय. So it's never a dull moment की every day सगळं न्यू आणि फन असतं.
पण अशी कधी म्हणजे गोंधळ झाले सुरुवातीला की यू हॅव तुम्हाला रॉंग थिंग्स किंवा कल्चरल सेन्सिटिव्हिटीज वेळ लागतो ना टू इव्हन अंडरस्टँड पटकन. तर द इनिशियल स्टेजेस कधी असे गुफाप झालेत का की आता यू कॅन लाफ ओव्हर इट, पण तेव्हा कदाचित थोडस असं काही म्हणजे यू कॅन शेअर सम फनी मोमेंट्स.
So some fun things is म्हणजे not really work wise but more from the point of कधीतरी आपण असं बाहेर असतो आणि कोणीतरी एक लँग्वेज बोलतंय, त्यांना वाटतं for example it's happened where in Singapore just a few months ago कोणीतरी फ्रेंच मध्ये बोलत होतं, माझ्या बाजूलाच होतं this couple आणि I was with 2 other friends. आम्ही बसलेलो just थोडंसं few like 1 meter apart, they were distancing. So easily ऐकू येत होतं काय बोलतात. Like, oh, these girls are very nice, they're very happy आणि ते म्हणजे ते सगळे एकदम छान ड्रेसअप होऊन आले आहेत, बहुतेक त्यांचा बर्थडे आहे आणि मग आपण त्यांना विश करूया का, will it look odd, I don't know इंडियन कल्चर मध्ये असं ओपनली विश करतात का, आणि ते असं बोलत होते कॉन्व्हर्सेशन आणि इट वेंट ऑन. आणि मग नंतर आम्ही काहीतरी मस्करी करत होतो. सो ते त्यांना समजत होतं कारण आम्ही इंग्लिश मध्ये बोलत होतो. मग ते सेड ओ ते त्याच्यावरून काहीतरी त्यांच्यात मस्करी करत होते. आणि मग नंतर परत निघताना
त्यांना माहिती आहे की यू आर अंडरस्टँडिंग मस्त.
आणि I was the only one who understood because both my friends were Chinese, त्यांना कळत नव्हतं. We were talking in English. आणि मग उठताना नंतर मी जस्ट असं पाठी ते हसत होत्या. तर मी म्हटलं यू कॅन विश देम, यू कॅन विश हर हॅपी बर्थडे. आणि मग ते जोरात हसायला लागले. They said, oh my God, you understood everything. And I said, yeah, it was fun. It was fine, because you all are just talking about wishing her and just, making jokes which are harmless. That happened. Or there was one time France madhe, I used to go to office and I used to walk like quite a distance. There used to be this old lady and ती every day मला बघायची जाताना. तर एक दिवस ती तिच्या मुलीबरोबर तिकडे आलेली काहीतरी घ्यायला ग्रोसरीज, आणि तेव्हा मी पण त्या ग्रोसरी स्टोअर मध्ये होती. तर ती तिच्या मुलीला सांगत होती, ही मुलगी आहे, हिला बघ, ही इंडियन आहे आणि ती रोज ऑफिसला जाते, पण ती फेरीज सारखं ड्रेस नाही करत, ती नॉर्मल लाईक office wear घालून जाते. आणि I heard her and then I said, can I ask why do you think I should dress up like a fairy to go to office? तर मग ती हसायला लागली and she said, oh my God, I thought पहिले तर she said, I didn't know you spoke this language. And I said, yes, I do. आणि मग तिने she was talking in French, तिने मग she switched to Spanish तिच्या मुलीशी बोलायला. आणि मग ती म्हणाली की oh, tila French karte. And then I started speaking in Spanish and then she totally lost it and she was like, oh my God. And then I said, why do you think so? She said, culturally we perceive ki Indians always as like Bollywood style.
Bollywood.
So then, people have these perceptions about Indians. So because they are not in the same profession. So at the same time, I have to be sensitive. They don't know. So I can't be like, what do you mean? Why should I dress up? I have to be patient with them and say, okay, it's not how people dress up every day. I mean, that's not the culture. What you see on TV, we do go to office, we do dress up like in normal clothes every day. I mean, those are just occasional clothes. So these kind of fun incidents did happen. And work-wise, some not so fun, but rather shocking incidents were work-wise, as in what I've heard at work is Jiva, especially with Mexico, right? खूप लोक Spanish बोलतात. आणि खूप लोक नाही बोलत, like all those American construction companies जे तिकडे असतात. So there was one scenario where this person was telling us he was using a software and he was asking me, what is the best way मला translation करता येईल without me studying the language. Me Google Translate वापरू का? And I said, not really. It depends. What is the purpose? Because Google Translate is not reliable for work-related or formal translations. So नुसतं असंच कोणाला hi, hello करायचं, sure. And then he said, नाही, मला माझ्या workers जे तिकडे त्या site वर काम करतात, I need to give them instructions, but the software is in English. So I said, well, we'll try to see what I can recommend. But for now, I don't think you should use it. Just for basic words, थोडंसं असं तुटकं बोलायला, use it. And then he said, yes, because काय झालं त्यांनी सांगितलं, few days ago, त्यांनी खूप मटेरियल आणून ठेवलेलं एका साईटवरती आणि त्यांनी लाईक अबाउट 2 किलोमीटर्स अवे त्यांना ते फ्यू डेजनी कन्स्ट्रक्ट करायचं होतं 2 levels लेटर. तर ते तुटक्या इंग्लिशमध्ये जेव्हा त्यांनी त्याला सांगितलं तेव्हा त्या मेन कॉन्ट्रॅक्टर अंडरस्टूड की ते घे आता जा आणि इन्स्टेड ऑफ दॅट 2 kilometers डिस्टन्स त्याला और 2 levels त्यांनी ते कन्फ्युजन मध्ये ही मूव्ड ऑल ऑफ दॅट मटेरियल आणि त्यांनी तिकडे ओव्हरनाईट ते कन्स्ट्रक्शन चालू केलं. When this man comes in the morning, त्यांनी ते बघितलं सगळं फाउंडेशन वर्क and he's like, काय, what happened? So then these people were like, oh, you told us to do this. आणि then त्यांनी सांगितलं नाही, मी सांगितलं की 2 kilometers साईट आहे, तिकडे फक्त हे नेऊन ठेवा, आपण नंतर 2 levels वरती ते करूया. So असं सगळं which sounds fun right now, but imagine the amount of man hours, labor cost, all of that goes into it, and all just because of mistranslations and yeah.
करेक्ट. खूपच केअरफुली ट्रान्सलेट म्हणजे आणि कधी कधी काही काही शब्द म्हणजे आपण हा शब्द वापरतो पण मे बी फॉर अनदर कल्चर इट इज डिफरंट मिनिंग असेल किंवा इट इज नॉट सो, असे पण काही खूप केअरफुली किंवा अगदी काळजीपूर्वक असे ट्रान्सलेशन करायला लागतात. कुठली अशी भाषा सांगते की तुला खूपच कठीण गेली की असं वाटलं की म्हणजे इट्स रिअली बियॉन्ड, म्हणजे फ्रेंच स्पॅनिश वगैरे तर तू एकदम इझिली सगळ्या आत्मसात केल्यास, पण अशी असेल की खूपच तुला म्हणजे खूपच काम करायला लागलं त्या भाषेवर?
That was Chinese. आणि अजून पण I cannot write very well, or I would say I cannot write after all these years, कारण it's very difficult आणि script wise खूप different आहे. So जरी हिंदी मराठी लिहिता येतं आणि that's different from English script किंवा Polish, Russian, sometimes even Greek is easier मला वाटतं than Chinese, कारण चायनीजचं पण एक थोडंसं लाईन किंवा तो that stroke चुकीचं गेल्यावर त्याचं मीनिंग कम्प्लिटली डिफरंट होऊ शकतं. त्याच्यामुळे आय डिसाइडेड की नो, इट्स बेस्ट टू लर्न स्पोकन आणि रिटन कॅन वेट. आणि सेम फॉर थाय, बिकॉज चायनीज मध्ये देयर 5 इंटोनेशन्स, द साऊंड्स जे लँग्वेज मध्ये असतात, आणि थाय मध्ये 7 आहेत. सो ऑलरेडी 5 साऊंड्स लर्न करायला आणि ते यूज करायला रोजच्या कॉन्व्हर्सेशन मध्ये इज डिफिकल्ट. तर 7 is almost impossible. I attempted it for a week and then I gave up. That's one language I have given up learning, even spoken, कारण it was extremely difficult.
अच्छा, म्हणजे उच्चाराप्रमाणे म्हणजे त्याचा अर्थ खूपच बदलतो.
खूप बदलतो, हो, आणि खूपच वाईट होऊ शकतो. सो
हो अगदी
better not
खूपच काळजीपूर्वक, अगदी अगदी बरोबर आहे. आणि म्हणजे तो आता एवढ्या भाषांचे उच्चार वगैरे कशी, म्हणजे कारण आपण मराठीत, आपला मराठी ऍक्सेंट इतका कधी कधी स्ट्रॉंग असतो की हाऊ डिड यू मॅनेज, म्हणजे कसं जमलं आणि काय त्याला तुला किती परिश्रम घ्यायला लागले असतील?
सो वेल, माझं मराठी ऍक्सेंट पण एकदम मराठी नाहीये. मी ऍक्च्युली एका पारसी स्कूलमध्ये आय स्टडीड. सो तिकडे मराठी स्पीकिंग पॉप्युलेशन वॉज लाईक, आय थिंक स्कूलमध्ये आम्ही 5 गर्ल्स होतो पूर्ण स्कूलमध्ये. सो फॉर मी ऍक्सेंट वाईज इट वॉज इझी टू अडॅप्ट, कारण इवन गुजराती, जेव्हा पारसी गुजराती वर्सेस गुज्जू गुजराती वर्सेस मुस्लिम लाईक द बोरी गुजराती, हे सगळ्याला पण एक्सपोजर होतं. अँड आय कुड पिक दोज ऍक्सेंट्स व्हेरी वेल. आणि आय वुड लिसन टू अ लॉट ऑफ ऑडिओ टेप्स वेन आय स्टार्टेड पहिली लँग्वेज फ्रेंच. अगेन जेव्हा ते आम्ही होस्ट करत होतो आणि गेस्ट यायचे तेव्हा दॅट हेल्प. परत मूवीज बघणं हेल्प्स अ लॉट. आणि विदाउट सबटायटल्स, पहिले सबटायटल्सनी चालू करायचं, मग समजतं, देन यू स्टॉप द सबटायटल्स, मग लिसन टू इट. आणि आता आय एम सो कम्फर्टेबल की मी इझिली सांगू शकते की हा माणूस स्पॅनिश, स्पेनवरून म्हणजे स्पेनचा आहे का, फ्रॉम लॅटिन अमेरिका, और स्पेसिफिक टू मेक्सिको. आणि इट्स व्हेरी इझी फॉर मी टू आयडेंटिफाय आफ्टर ऑल दीज इयर्स. फक्त स्विचिंग ऍक्सेंट्स टेक्स टाइम. सो जेव्हा मी फ्रेंच मध्ये बोलत असेन आणि मग सडनली मला, लेट्स फॉर एक्झाम्पल, आज मला एवढं मराठीमध्ये बोलायचं आहे आणि मी खूप दिवस मराठी नसेल बोलली, तर पटकन स्विच करायला आय विल टेक लाईक अबाउट 10 minutes आणि मग नंतर I get into the flow, then it's easier. But it comes naturally because I think एवढे वर्ष आता बोलून सवय झाली आहे. पहिले थोडं थोडं दुसरे वर्ड यायचे आणि मध्येच just fun sorry not fun but funny pronunciations यायची कारण काही वर्ड्स रोज वापरायची सवय नसते. So that happened.
तू म्हणजे विचारलंय कोणतरी की तू मूवी सबटायटल्स करतेस का म्हणजे फॉर फॉरेन लँग्वेजेस?
Yes, I don't आता पण मी करायची. मी खूप मूवी सबटायटल्स केलेले आहेत एस्पेशली फॉर स्पॅनिश आणि त्याच्यात पण खूप फन एक्सपिरियन्सेस आले होते कारण पहिले जेव्हा ते येतं तेव्हा इंग्लिशमध्ये ट्रान्सलेटेड असतं, कोणीतरी केलेलं असतं आणि मग what I'm talking about is मूवी असेल इंग्लिशमध्ये आणि मग सबटायटल पण इंग्लिशमध्ये आणि मग त्याला स्पॅनिश करायचं किंवा एक फ्रेंच और स्पॅनिश मूवी और इटालियन मूवी आहे आणि सबटायटल्स इटालियन मध्ये किंवा अजून एक थर्ड लँग्वेज मध्ये त्याला इंग्लिश करायचे. सो अशा ह्याच्यात खूप गंमत आलेली कारण काही वेळेला ट्रान्सलेशन खूप फनी असतात जे पहिलंच येतं कन्व्हर्जनच्या वेळेला आणि कधी कधी ते I mean not so much with foreign languages कारण it's European languages खूप क्लोज असतात so there is less room for error जेव्हा हे होतात पण इंग्लिश वरनं करताना जेव्हा हिंदी बॉलिवूड मूवीज असतात तेव्हा सबटायटल इंग्लिश मध्ये मिळतं आणि मग ते फ्रेंच स्पॅनिश मध्ये करायचं असतं. सो दॅट इज फनी कारण सॉन्ग चालू असतं मग ते काहीतरी दुसरंच बोलतात खाली काहीतरी अजून दुसरं आहे. सो यू डोंट नो त्या अजून थर्ड लँग्वेज मध्ये मी ह्याला काय करू बिकॉज ऑलरेडी सॉंग्स हॅव व्हेरी फनी लिरिक्स मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स त्या खालच्या सबटायटलिंग मध्ये. पण द बेस्ट वन्स टू ट्रान्सलेट आर हॉरर मूवीज बिकॉज they एकदम really fun त्याचे words are very easy to find आणि it's very close to जे original आहे. Yeah, so it's been a good experience, you know, working across that. किंवा sometimes even ads जेव्हा होतात दुसऱ्या लँग्वेज मध्ये. So I do voice over direction. म्हणजे ते जे आर्टिस्ट असतात किंवा some celebrities and they have to say like you know this is the best in the world. मग how do they say it? तर फ्रान्समध्ये बोलत असतील तर आय नीड देम विथ मोर ऍक्सेंट्स more intonations आणि मग maybe they're speaking in German it has to be slightly flatter so they can't be like very jumpy and excited or in Italian it has to be really with a lot of emotion because they are emotional or with actions, you know, like even when they don't have actions I have to tell them just act it out because you know that's how your emotions will come. So and yeah, all of these things like are very new आणि like एकदा हे केलंय मूवी सबटायटल मध्ये तर नेक्स्ट टाइम ऍड मध्ये काहीतरी दुसरंच आहे असं खूप डिफरंट एक्सपिरियन्सेस आहेत.
अच्छा अच्छा फॅन्टास्टिक. आणि आय थिंक कोणी विचारले की संस्कृत तू शिकलेस का आणि
संस्कृत नाही आय हॅवंट स्टडीड अट ऑल. मला बिलकुल नाही. मला वाचता येतं बिकॉज यु नो ऑफकोर्स फॉर पूजेच्या दिवशी वगैरे जेव्हा वाचतो ते पण नाही अदरवाईज मला असं बोलता किंवा हे नाही. प्रोनाउन्सिएशन एकदम स्पष्ट असतात कारण दॅट कम्स विथ ऑल लँग्वेजेस बट फॉर्मल स्टडीज नाही केलेत.
बरोबर. अशी काही लँग्वेजेसचे ग्रुप आहेत का की ही भाषा शिकली की इतर भाषा जरा सोप्या जातात असं म्हणजे काही असं हे असतं?
Oh, yes, there is. So, mainly these languages which are called as Romance languages, त्याच्यामध्ये groups असतात where if you study, for example, Spanish, to study Portuguese, Italian is much easier. Also Romanian, which is very surprising, but it is quite close to Portuguese. And then if you study German, Dutch, Norwegian, Swedish, Finnish, हे सगळे close languages आहेत. Then, you know, I don't speak any of African languages, but those are not exactly or not similar at all, but it's a closer group. So, थोडंसं once you get the hang of it or grammar जेव्हा येतं किंवा sentence structure formation, then it becomes easier to study those.
तू म्हणाली होतीस की फ्रेंच म्हणजे जे फ्रान्समध्ये फ्रेंच बोलतात किंवा कॅनडाच्या एका प्रॉव्हिन्स मध्ये फ्रेंच बोलतात किंवा क्रेओल फ्रेंच ते खूप वेगवेगळे म्हणजे काय फरक काय म्हणजे या अशा एकच भाषांमध्ये म्हणजे लोकल शब्द असतात की हा?
सो फरक इज एकतर प्रोनाउन्सिएशन वेगळे असतात आणि सम टर्मिनॉलॉजी वेगळी असते आणि दॅट मेक्स a very huge difference. So let's say, for example, I mean, for the benefit of बाकी सगळ्यांना समजायला, English मध्ये जेव्हा आपण बोलतो, I'm taking a lift to go to the 4th floor, आणि we use lift very commonly in India or in most countries because it's UK English. And when you're using American English, तेव्हा आपण बोलतो, I'm taking the elevator to level something. The elevator and lift is not much of a difference. But let's say you are from a third country which uses neither of these words, and you're listening to it, and they only understand lift as like a, you know, like a lift to pick up things, or so त्यांचं ते misinterpretation होतं. So that is how these 3 languages, like French from let's say Creole, or from Canada or France, these are the differences, and you can easily tell when people are speaking that specific language. Of course, जे Canadian French आहे आणि or even Creole or any other countries where they speak French, त्यांना French France कळतं very easily. There is no problem at all. पण जेव्हा ते बोलतात तेव्हा French from like spoken in France, तिकडचा जो माणूस असेल त्याला पटकन कळतं हे माझं नॉर्मल फ्रेंच नाहीये. He may not be able to tell तो exactly कुठचा accent आहे, पण त्यांना कळतं की हे तिकडचं नाहीये.
तू स्पॉन्टेनियसली कुठल्या भाषेत बोलतेस, म्हणजे असं आपण म्हणतो ना एकदम?
Me, well, of course, English, that's the first language that comes to mind. When we were kids, though, French was a language because my sister speaks thoda French. And we used to have this secret code because she was learning. Mala already yet hota. So to hide things from our mom, ami kadi bolaitso. And then, you know, especially in front of her to discuss some secret code. So that was one language. But ata, I think, especially Singapore la moves alavarti, you know, even though it's multicultural, exposure to other European languages, which is mainly my forte, खूप कमी आहे. Modern English becomes like the most immediate action language.
असं म्हणतात की भाषा शिकल्यामुळे ना ब्रेन डेव्हलपमेंट आणि खूपच तेज असतं. तर असं काही तुझे अनुभव आहेत का, म्हणजे याच्यामुळे मेमरी शार्प होते जास्त, रिटेन्शन पॉवर, मेमरायझेशन, असं त्याबद्दल काय सांगू शकशील?
So it definitely is better because that part of your brain is more developed and it influences other things. For example, I also work on design thinking, and that's something where you, before तुम्ही काही पण decisions करता, it is by design. That's just 5 levels असतात, to empathize, to you know, to, which is like to brainstorm, to understand काय पाहिजे. So त्याच्यात with that linguistic brain, it helps you to connect to people. It helps to build sensitivities to other cultures वगैरे. So जसं मी सांगितलं मगाशी, you know, जेव्हा त्या बाईनी मला असं म्हटलं की तुम्ही असे कपडे कसं घालता किंवा तू का नाही घालत. So normally असं everyday कोणी विचारलं, we would be like, what do you mean? You know, we might get angry ki ha asa ka vicharta hai, but you are sensitive, so that automatically comes naturally. You know, the way you handle problems, you don't immediately react if you're in a situation ki, oh, how did this happen? You always think from that other perspective because there's a cultural aspect to it, and you try to imagine. A lot of times it happens, Jeremy, Chinese colleagues बरोबर काम करते because their way of working is different आणि त्यांचा pace is very slow. Similarly happens with some Arabic countries. And just yesterday, to give you an example, मी एका speaker session मध्ये होती आणि तिकडे we were talking about Arabic language किंवा कसे different styles आहेत. तेव्हा मी काहीतरी explain केलं आणि तेव्हा that person who asked me the question said, okay, thank you. And of course, there were so many people ki mala opportunity nahi mihali to clarify, did I answer or did you get it? Mag nantar tini mala ek question vicharla and then I answered. And mati mali, sorry, can you summarize it? So me summarize kela and she said, sorry, can you speak slow? So mag mala kaila ki it is about, she speaks only one, well, English and Arabic, 2 languages. So her way to, you know, capture information, to assimilate, dissimilate, and you know, all of that is very different versus somebody who speaks languages, or how you try to analyze things and apply it on a day-to-day basis. All of that also makes a difference. And approaches to even everyday things change a lot compared to when you're monolingual or probably like a bilingual person.
नक्कीच नक्कीच.
And helps memory because, you know, the more languages you study, of course, you have to have a fantastic memory to remember everything. So it's definitely a recommended practice for people to study a language at any age because it is going to help you jog that memory and keep your brain active more often.
अच्छा, एक प्रश्न आहे, कॅन यू गिव्ह सम एक्झाम्पल्स ऑफ स्पीकिंग इन अ फ्यू लँग्वेजेस. म्हणजे एकच कुठली तरी अशी वाक्य घे आणि
Okay, so I'll do a simple one. Okay, I'll be like, hello, how are you today? Okay, so I'll start with French. Bonjour, comment ça va? Then I'll start with Spanish. Hola, ¿qué tal? Then I'll do Spanish Mexican. Hola, amigo, ¿qué pasa? And then I'll do Italian. Ciao, ¿qué tal? Sorry. Ciao. Como es? Sorry. I got mixed up. Then I'll do Italian. Is ciao, buongiorno, come stai? Bene, tutto bene, piacere. Then I will do, I don't know which one did I do.
Maybe Japanese, some Asian language if you can.
Asian language, Japanese, not so good at it, but maybe I will do Chinese then. Ni hao. Maybe, what do I say? I will say something different. I totally lost track of that because I'm still on the other one. And I'm still on the Marathi mode.
Yeah. असं खूप होत असेल ना, एवढं पटपट स्विच करायचे लँग्वेजेस. म्हणजे एकच वाक्य असलं तरी असं खूपच कठीण जात असेल. आणि म्हणजे आता इंग्लिश म्हणजे भाषा ऍक्सेंट्स आता खूप वेगवेगळे आहेत इंग्लिशचे पण. म्हणजे ऑस्ट्रेलियन इंग्लिश म्हणा, अमेरिकन इंग्लिश, ब्रिटिश इंग्लिश. तर ते कसं मग म्हणजे हाऊ डिड दॅट वन लँग्वेज एवढे बदल कसे आले?
So it's mostly about words. Just like I explained, you know, lift versus elevator is one example, or maybe in other terms, British English, they will use the like kilometers versus miles, or words. And that because of that, these words are not easy to understand by language by countries. Main language nahi hai. So for the Nordic countries, English, okay, Amsterdam is one city where it's very popularly used. But confusion asai ki they study in Netherlands UK English school made, and on anything that they use daily basis they use American English. So a bit like Singapore, jikre school made pan UK English shikota bolta because they are watching so many movies
American.
And TV shows, they American words use kartat, and in the end it gets confused because it's a mishmash of both American and British English. What happens with Australia is actually they're using both English, UK and US, depending on what content it is. So for everyday colloquial, of course, they use Australian slang, right? But they use a lot of British English. And surprisingly, New Zealand uses US English for most of their content. They're so close to Australia, they don't use the UK variant of English. It doesn't matter so much everyday speech because we do understand. But when you're working on content which is for consumers, let's say software content, legal content, for media, these things matter because you can't use and replace one word for another. It breaks the chain, it breaks continuity, it gives like a very bad user experience. One place you're talking of American, or you're cutting words because American always contracts the words, like not it is but it's, not this is but this or yours or sasaga. So that is the difference in these languages. And some terms which are not specific to daily life, पण they are content specific like terminology. So in the field of medical, kiva in the field of construction, or maybe even in the field of production and manufacturing, त्याच्यामध्ये these terms matter, because like I said, moving from one place to another जेव्हा त्यांनी केलं, it was त्याच्या normal spoken language मध्ये it didn't make much of a difference, but in the actual technical term it made a huge difference and a loss for the company.
बरोबर. सो टेक्निकल लँग्वेज आणि तुमची म्हणजे सोशल लँग्वेज मध्ये पण थोडा फरक असणार की.
राईट.
मस्त मस्त. आणि तू काहीतरी म्हणत होतीस की मुलांना जेव्हा व्हिडिओ गेम्स तू बनवतेस ते सुद्धा खूप तुम्हाला म्हणजे काळजीपूर्वक बदलायला लागतात, डिपेंडिंग कुठल्या लँग्वेज साठी बनवत आहे, त्याच्याबद्दल काहीतरी सांग जुलिया.
Yes, त्याच्यासाठी I will share one slide with you all quickly to see that. Okay, do you all see this one?
Oh.
Okay, so this is, I mean, not exactly related, but what I'm showing you is translation आपण already बोललो, आणि cultural consultation is related to that game part. So that आणि little bit of खालचा that cloud has, त्याच्यामध्ये I have mentioned localization, globalization, internationalization. These are very technical terms, so I won't get into it. But the reason why I'm showing this game localization हे सगळ्याचं mixture असतं. आणि it's not, I'm just going to skip down to that part here to show you. So this is one example that I could use to explain that, is this one artist from somewhere in Norway or Netherlands, I'm not sure. So she has actually explained that very well. Left la we see, something that is for an Asian language. Asian locale, which is in China or Vietnam. त्यांनी तिकडे that person with that hat दाखवलाय. Tea is the social beverage there, enjoyed, आणि मग rice bowl. But then when they move into Germany, that person then becomes somebody who, having a feather in the hat or eating a sausage and a beer. And these are like involving localization. There will be translation that comes later. आणि cultural appropriation, ज्याच्यामध्ये they are replacing the sausage and beer with tea आणि bowl of rice. So game localization is something like this. जेव्हा games, especially आता during the pandemic, सगळे घरी बसून games खेळतात. So children, when they're playing these games, there are a lot of adult content or bad words or abusive language. There is a lot of use of alcohol, violence. हे सगळं some countries मध्ये there is a censorship. आणि as part of this role, it is important ki you know all of this and you propose ki okay, ह्या country साठी you can't use this. So for the Arabic countries, Arabic speaking countries, anything around the Middle East, alcohol showing that on game is prohibited, or using certain words is prohibited. When we work in, when we're localizing for, let's say India, and there's a game that is coming up in Hindi, actually there's a lot coming up. You have to avoid use of bad language. And in English, there's like multiple bad words that people are using. So how do you replace them with some words? Kiva jar replace nasil karaycha, tak instead of that, can you cut that part of the game? There is one part where game localization मध्ये we actually even propose character changes. So something like इकडे हे दोन माणसांचे photos आहेत. So एक कुठचा तरी खूप violent character असेल, and that is very easily used in some countries. The countries where all of this is banned, or they have a little bit of, let's say Bhutan साठी बनवलाय. So use a more calm, composed character playing the game. Kiva Pokemon, for example, this is a very popular game, and Pokemon characters originally versus what were changed for certain countries, खूप different. And different as in the character stays the same, but then the dressing, or how their actions are, sometimes then the body parts, how they're exposed, all of this matters, and then they change that. So the interesting part is people who love to play games, they can play games, and they can think of it as a career option, ki all the time tumhala game khelta he karta hai, and you can be proposing these. So this is like a fantastic opportunity, and for children, to learn to play games and a language at the same time, kuchhi tari naveen. So that's the cool benefit of language localization and games.
आता आपण ऑडियन्स कडनं पण प्रश्न घेऊया.
Before that, can I share like some fun things about translation?
Sure.
Because I've collected some.
Zarur.
Let me share. Okay. Do you see this cloud slide? Translation gone wrong?
नाही, मला अजून ते आधीचाच स्लाइड दिसतोय.
आता कोक पेप्सीचा स्लाइड दिसतंय?
नाही.
Okay, sorry. Let me. Not yet?
No. तो आधीचाच आता दिसतोय.
आता दिसतंय ना? Okay. Let me just go full screen. Okay. So in this, what happens is I'm just going to show you a few examples ज्याच्यामध्ये translation has gone wrong. Okay, so this is one slide. This is one ad, and it's a very old ad. But during those days, you know, Pepsi was like into making very fun, cool ads, and they were like reaching out to the youth. So they wanted to do this ad left मध्ये that's made for the US market, and that says "Come alive, you're in the Pepsi generation." आणि त्यांना तसंच इक्विव्हलंट बनवायचं होतं फॉर द चायनीज मार्केट. सो जेव्हा त्यांनी चायनामध्ये लॉन्च केलं तेव्हा त्यांनी त्याचंच ग्राफिक्स ते ट्रान्सलेटेड इन टू चायनीज. पण ते चायनीज जे टेक्स्ट आहे, सो इन्स्टेड ऑफ द कम अलाइव्ह टॅगलाईन, त्याचं ट्रान्सलेशन इज बाय शनी द चू चियन चू शिए शम. सो दॅट मीन्स ब्रिंग युअर अँसेस्टर्स बॅक फ्रॉम द ग्रेव्ह. So instead of come alive, it's literally like, you know, bring people back from the grave. So that funny thing happened. And of course, it was a failed example. So nobody wanted to buy Pepsi at that point of time in China. Mug, another brand that did that was Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola, ni jeva launched, it was not called Coke yet, then it was called Coca-Cola. And in Taiwan, they launched this campaign, then exactly Coca-Cola sarkha sounding characters search kele, and they went through about 40,000 characters to come across these characters je ekdam closely English la match karti. In the end, that content, the translation is, I will just say how it is. It's like Coca-Cola. Okay, so that's Coca-Cola. But that Coca-Cola actually means bite the frog, tadpole, the frog baby. So, you know, bite a wax tadpole, or it means that female horse stuffed with wax. So it became a disastrous translation, and nobody wanted to buy Coca-Cola. So it happened with two really big brands there, Coke and Pepsi, in these two markets in China and Taiwan. And that's not just it. This was the most funniest one. So Schweppes, again, is a beverage brand, and in Italy, they translated, had the packaging called as tonica. So tonica means toilet water in Italy. So people were like, are you going to sell us bottled or canned toilet water? So that was a failed campaign. That's for beverages. Another one is KFC. So KFC is, of course, finger licking good. We all know it. जेव्हा त्यांनी चायनामध्ये ते केलं तेव्हा finger licking good चं झालं bite your fingers off. You know? So that was again bad translation. And KFC was a brand जो एकदम extra popular होता तिकडे. Sorry, बिल्कुल popular नव्हता after all of this ad. But today it is the #1 fast food brand in China, and people always go to KFC. So, you know, after the whole branding change, it became so popular, already a favorite brand. But before that, it was really, really terrible with this translation mistake. And this is like, I don't know, way before I was born. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with cars. So जी वरती टॉपला आहे, that is a GM Motors car, आणि खालती Ford ची कार आहे. आणि ह्याच्यामध्ये जी GM Motors ची कार आहे त्याच्यामध्ये त्या कारचं नाव आहे नोवा. And they had launched it for the South American market. The South America, or in Latin languages, Spanish or any other Puerto Rican or those variants, Nova means won't go, you know, or doesn't go. So the purpose of getting a car is to go, but if you just call it Nova, it has a really meaning behind it. So then again, that was a flop campaign. Ford, so this was specifically for the Dutch market. And then that Dutch market said the English caption of that car was, every car has a high quality body. So they want to promote it's a nice, strong, sturdy car. But when they put it into the localized Dutch version, it was translated as every car has a high quality, and the word for body was translated as corpse. So then people started doing, the internet was not like that, popular. So people started to have these campaigns which they put skeletons in the car picture, and they started to share that because it was like, oh really, you're going to sell us a car with a corpse. So that was about just, pure translation gone wrong. Then this is localization gone wrong, because localization is a little beyond translation. Can you cater for the local market? So Ikre, what they did was this Gerber baby food's brand they had launched in Africa. And in Africa मध्ये it was the norm की जे काही packaging वरती असेल ते आतमध्ये contents ते असतात. So if you're selling shampoo, the bottle varti they will show shampoo only. Or if you're buying beans, the can varti beans the picture ase. So ikde they had put the baby picture, and for the longest time people in Africa thought that countries are branded, they pureed babies, and it didn't help with the fact that they put like made with the help of the tiny taste testers. So it was a very, very failed, bad, scary concept for people to believe, and they stayed away from the baby food for a long time. And the cultural misappropriation. So this is very, very critical. And when I say like censorship, kiva laws, this is what I would mainly work with. That's how people are using things without, cultural sensitivity. So just as Spain, they had this ad, which was La Merienda es Sagrada. So they were trying to show that they're offering a burger, hamburgers, ham and cheese, and putting it in front of Lakshmi. And people were like, this is insensitive to the Hindus. Then they retract Kela. But they like to, go extreme with either it is racism or it's like cultural misappropriation, especially Burger King as a brand. So the second image you see, it is an American guy, and Bazula is a Mexican tiny man, and then he like gathered or united by destiny. So which means like Americans are supposed to be like superior to a Mexicans are face covered or like hidden, and so it's racially insensitive also. And these are things either was published for provocative reasons, they wanted to get that reaction, but normally censorship laws forbid for these kind of ads. So that's one part of the role. And this one you might remember, even though he Ho Chi Minh साठी, but a while ago China मध्ये, I think it was last year, Dolce and Gabbana ने त्यांचा एक fashion campaign launch केलेली, ज्याच्यामध्ये they were eating spaghetti and a lot of European food with chopsticks. So that was racially insensitive, and that made sure की China ने ते सगळे त्यांचे related luxury brands ban केले होते. I don't even know if they've opened up yet, but that caused a lot of stir in the China market. So they did the same for Vietnam. They burger khatat with the help of chopsticks. So these things are like not funny and they hurt people. So we have to be careful about that. And if they don't have people in-house, they check karaila, then this is what happens. Or they don't have the right people, this is what happens. I think you all would be familiar with this also. Nike fire logos hota. They made it as a fire logo. They did not think it will be insensitive, but it looks like or appears to be written like Allah. And then the Muslim population all over the world banned it. They had to completely eliminate sales. Then a sagar recall karal lagla. But they didn't learn, because 6 years later, then Air Max launch killer. And they used a trick where then Air Max they've again provocatively used the font which looks like Allah, which resulted into people recalling. But by then people had become very smart, so people paid more money to use these kind of shoes having this written on the sole. So it's like there's culturally insensitive people in both areas of life. And so these are like some of the things that are part of my job, and I need to look into this on a daily basis. And this was just like one of the examples that I shared.
But पुस्तकं पण ट्रान्सलेट केलीस, म्हणजे मूवी तर केले सबटायटल्स, पण बुक्स
नाही, बुक्स मी अजून ट्रान्सलेट नाही केले.
अच्छा अच्छा. पण आय एम शुअर यु नो
Someday.
नक्कीच करशील. येस येस. का नाही. तर आता कॅन वी हॅव क्वेश्चन्स फ्रॉम.
So, Sankeshwari, there is one question की भाषा शिकताना आजच्या काळात तू whether you take English as a base and then start translating.
Yes, I do. Current, I'm more comfortable with English, so I take English as a base. पण जेव्हा मी start केलं होते translations, not French or Spanish, but most other languages, तेव्हा मी Indian languages the grammar as a base घ्यायची, because some languages are based on that grammar, and English grammar is not that strong for translators to use as a base.
Okay, interesting. Okay. Then there's one more question about foreign languages. Which foreign languages do you think that it's was easiest to learn?
Most
or easiest to learn?
Easiest to learn is Italian or Spanish, but more Italian than Spanish because it's very syllabic. So exactly जसं दिसतं तसंच बोलायला लागतं, तर त्याच्यात प्रॉब्लेम येत नाही. आणि फेअरली लेसर टाइम मध्ये शिकता येते इटालियन compared to other languages. I think it takes about a year and a half to maximum to be fluent in it.
Okay. Then there's one question about, are you concerned about a lot of languages may become extinct, and even in English accent may be lost? What can be done to prevent the languages and accents?
So extinct, yes. Like we said, we saw many languages that are already going extinct, and it also depends, how or what is the purpose of that language. If you're just using it for communicating in a really small group of people, do you want to take it forward? It depends on that. In terms of culture, in terms of how they perceive it, and whether they want to educate other people and bring it out to the world. There's also the part about whether you feel that language has a scope in terms of marketing. And today everything is about consumerism. So do you think that there are consumers of products or that language on a whole? And if not, then it's definitely going to go extinct. But if you want to save it, there are actually groups, and they do save languages. So if there is a language that you feel is on the radar, you can just literally Google. I think it's called Ethnologue group or something, and if they zatat to those places, they try to understand Kai or how that language came into existence. They make groups. There are some languages taught at the Oxford University which are extinct languages. There's like a course on that, and people are studying them to bring them forward for the future generations. I'm sorry, I didn't get the second part of it.
The second part was actually about
Accents.
English
what can be done to preserve languages plus accents.
Okay, so accents is there is this perception where people feel accent is a cool thing to have. To me, I would say personally, it's not a cool thing to have. When you speak English, and if you have an accent, people say, oh, you have an Indian accent. Because you're Indian, you have an Indian accent. Because you're British, you have a British accent. And you're Australian, you have an Australian accent. It's not necessarily bad, because Americans have an American accent, and they didn't invent English, right? It's not their language. So it's not the correct accent. It's not the best accent. I would say don't pay so much attention on the accent. It is very important that your speech is clear and the words are clear for the other person to understand. So accents are not important. Of course, that's limited to that language. But if you're using, let's say, a Marathi accent when you speak French, of course, they're not going to understand. So any language that is in that broad bandwidth of the language fits. And you should never feel bad about using that or feel like, oh my God, I have an accent, because I'm sure you haven't heard Americans have many accents and they don't even understand each other. And if they start, oh, you're from the South, oh, you're from the West, or, you're from like this part of the country. It happens everywhere. So it's absolutely fine. Just if you feel your accent is so strong and the other person is not able to understand, try to make it neutral, but don't like change it completely. When you speak, you're not going to be fluent, or you're not going to be very confident speaking, trying to imitate something.
Okay, great. अजून एक प्रश्न आहे, that is about which 2 languages you find similar to learn, or they can, like, once you learn one language, you easily can be adapted, or you can learn the second language.
That is French and Italian, or Italian and Romanian. They are very close. Oh, sorry, did I say French? I meant Spanish and Italian, and Italian and Romanian. They are very closely grouped. And if you, or even Portuguese for that matter, so they are under the same family. I mean, you can easily understand words. Purna sentence nahi samjhat because the structure is a bit different, but words you can understand. Maybe 2 years of Spanish शिकल्यानंतर Portuguese, Romanian हे easily understand करतात.
पण म्हणजे मेन स्पॅनिश आणि साऊथ अमेरिकामध्ये जे स्पॅनिश बोलतात ते कळतं की तिकडे पण खूप फरक आहे? कळतं,
नाही कळतं, फक्त वर्ड्स मग ते डिफरंट आणि लोकल ह्याचे पण कळतं.
बरोबर बरोबर.
ओके,
नाही बोला.
अजून एक प्रश्न आहे तो म्हणजे संकेश्वरी, आफ्टर ऑन द लिबर्टी साइड फॉर यू, नोइंग मोर लँग्वेजेस, did it lead to reading a lot of books in those languages?
Did it what? Sorry?
Did it reading a lot of books in those languages? So do you read a lot of books also in those languages, whichever you've known so far?
Okay, I did when I started learning those languages. I honestly right now don't have that much time, so I'm not reading so much. But yes, when I started, I did read a lot. I watched a lot of movies and heard a lot of audios, whether it was songs or whether it was just people speaking. That gives me a good listen, and then that listening helped me hear, understand people, or if I'm speaking, if I hear somebody speaking, I can catch and grasp words easily. So I would say more than reading, listening helps.
Okay, so you recommend rather than reading, listening or watching is more useful?
Yes, just for spoken, I would say yes. Listening is more helpful. I've learned some languages just by watching movies. So
there's one question about Sankeshwari, how to improve English language in the kids below 14 years? So any suggestion?
So I do like these kind of exercises for kids whenever I have the time. So I'll either volunteer, give online lessons. There's intonation exercises, and there's a lot like, let's say I want to say, hi, how are you today, Bhushan? And I'll be like, hey, Bhushan, how are you today? Like I keep intonating all of that. And there's many exercises that they definitely develop an interest, first of all, because you're hearing this, it's very animated. And they realize that pronunciations change. So how you would speak on a flat level versus that is very different. Of course, once they get used to it, they will speak normally. But where to have a pause, where to speak really fast, or where to contract a word, where to take it slow and break the word. Like pronunciation is a word most people pronounce as pronunciation, and they don't realize it. So, I would be like pronunciation. So just do those kind of exercises. So I don't know who asked that question, but I can leave my email and you can get in touch with me. I can share a link to some websites, and it's free to just go register and practice through that.
So you reckon, that helps to learn different, create an interest among small kids to learn different languages also?
Yeah. And it's got like some poems or some songs, so where they stop or how they are using these animations to teach that. It's interesting.
Okay, there is one question, Sankeshwari. What is the difference between interpretation and translation?
Okay, so translation is written, like converting eka language madhun dusra language मध्ये, and interpretation is when you're actually speaking. So जसं आता आपण मराठी बोलतोय आणि then somebody who doesn't understand Marathi त्याला English मध्ये कोणीतरी
भाषांतर
spoken translation. Interpretation is basically spoken translation, and it either happens directly, like simultaneously, किंवा कोणीतरी बोलतं मग ते थांबल्यानंतर you start and you interpret for someone.
ओके, खूपच डिटेल मध्ये सांगितलं सगळं संकेश्वरी. आणि म्हणजे किती अभ्यास आहे तुझा आणि तुला वेळ कसा पुरतो हेच मला कळत नाहीये. एवढ्या भाषा प्लस यु नो. आता सध्या तो ऑटोडेस्क मध्ये, म्हणजे इज इट सिमिलर टू द गुगल ट्रान्सलेट म्हणजे?
No, so this आता मी जे करते ना, that is for any content जे Autodesk, whether you see websites, you know, marketing or in product, legal content, everything I oversee त्यांचं linguistic quality. And so I work with all country offices to recommend what is you know, good quality किंवा audit quality आणि tell them मग कुठच्या country मध्ये I decide like the style guidelines ki, how you use like metric system or not. What would you or how would you want to be referred to, like Mr. or Miss someone, or directly hi and name, you know. So these are recommendations that I make on a day-to-day basis. And apart from that, because I had all of this experience, what I've done recently is I have developed my own tool. So I'm also a product owner right now. And that is one of a kind tool in the localization industry. So I've spoken like at multiple conferences and I get invited all the time to share about it. That is an automated workflow for quality checks. I mean, that's taken me like a year to build, but 3 years to completely release it out. I plan to like open source it so more companies can use it because we're not a company, software for localization, one of that. So that's like a really, really big achievement. And I in fact presented it at the Ministry of Communications conference in Singapore last year. Last year when we were still able to go and present in person.
हो सध्या सगळं ऑनलाईन चाललंय.
And there's, you know, a lot of scope for this kind of field. So apart from the regular jobs, all the time I'm invested in building community. So Jenna interest us though in translations, whether it is professionals, even students. There are many students who are part of the community. We meet once a month on a Thursday during lunch hour. It's online, and they just share. So you know, I will tell them, you know, these are opportunities, or this is what I'm working on, without releasing any confidential information. So there's a video subtitling. I will tell them, you know, how do I do that? What are the rules I set? Kiti characters nandar stop karaycha because human mind can't digest if you put in too many long sentences. So we share all of that, and yeah, there's so many things to do. It's not just limited to translation. So language gives you like a big opportunity. Things.
एक प्रश्न आहे संकेश्वरी, what are the prospects for a multilingual job in India?
So Ata, because you saw, you know, Hindi, Marathi, all of those Telugu are languages that are gaining a lot of momentum. There is a lot of scope right now if that was specific to Indian languages. But even if it's not, there are many companies that Ata outsource kartat projects to India. But people are not comfortable, and also it's not advisable to work with non-native translators. So if today I was in India and I said, you know, I can translate Chinese, the possibility of somebody working with me is very minimal versus somebody based out of China. Or even Singapore, they wouldn't work unless it's a Singapore flavor that they're looking for. So that is very important. But for Indian languages, it is growing a lot. In fact, for mobile phones, your language settings change karto. I think it was just Hindi and 1 or 2 other South Indian languages that were available. Now there's like a whole range of languages because they know there's more and more consumers who want languages outside of English. So really good scope right now.
You mean to say for announcements and so on, is it on mobile phones?
Now, even for, you know, Jiva, you go to change, go in your messages,
that's what
and all of that. Yeah, everything, all of that. Even websites work. Like you see, I mean, Google, yes, translate is a totally different thing, but normal websites also, just maybe a airline website. Adi, it was always in English or maybe French or one other language at the most. Ata, you see every website, if you scroll down or somewhere on the top, there'll be a globe, and you click on it, it'll give you at least 15, 20 languages that you can explore. And that's why the Indian languages are getting more and more visibility.
प्रियाताई, आता आपण ना मला वाटतं अनम्यूट करू सगळ्या प्रश्न विचारायचे असतील तर. एव्हरीबडी जर कोणाला काही प्रश्न असतील तर यू कॅन अनम्यूट युअर
डायरेक्टली विचारा. येस,
आणि तुम्ही प्रश्न विचारू शकता. सो वन बाय वन मे बी.
मी विचारू का एक प्रश्न? तर म्हणजे
हो
हो
यशवंत,
हो
go ahead.
यशवंत विचार.
संकेश्वरी, तुमची ही माहिती खूपच म्हणजे खूप खूप आवडली आणि मला वाटतं तुम्हाला कोणी स्पर्धा करणार नसणार आता इथे. आणि सिंगापूरमध्येच तुम्ही आहात तर आपली भेट होईल अशी माझी अपेक्षा. आणि मला एक प्रश्न विचारायचा आहे तुम्हाला की जगातल्या काही भाषा ह्या प्रचंड गोड असतात. म्हणजे आता तुम्हाला उदाहरणच द्यायचं झाली तर बंगाली भाषा, म्हणजे आपल्या भारतातली बंगाली भाषा आणि परदेशातली फ्रेंच भाषा, ह्या भाषा म्हणजे कानाला अशा अगदी खूप गोड हव्याशा वाटतात. तर मला नेहमी एक उत्सुकता असते, खरंच या भाषेत म्हणजे ही भाषा इतकी प्रेमळ आहे का वगैरे, त्या भाषेतली लोक म्हणजे भांडतच नसतील किंवा असं, म्हणजे खूप असं वाटतं वगैरे. मला नेहमी असं वाटतं खरंच इतकी गोड भाषा ऐकून आपल्याला खूप छान वाटतं. त्याच उलट काही भाषा अतिशय कर्कश वाटतं. असं वाटतं की या भाषेतील लोक सतत काहीतरी आदळ आपड आणि भांडण करत असतील वगैरे. तर याचं काही असं तुम्हाला कधी वाटलं का वगैरे, असं म्हणजे इतका गोडवा त्या भाषेत तुम्हाला पण कधी जाणवला का असा?
Oh, a lot. In fact, मी जेव्हा French was the first language जी मी शिकली, आणि नंतर जेव्हा मी जे languages जसं Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, these are all called romance languages. कारण ते खूप sweet and mild and very soft spoken आहेत, or very rhythmic आहेत. But then when you go on to Swedish, Finnish, Dutch, German, they are very like they are spoken from here, and बाकी languages like from your stomach, so all the way in. आणि it does reflect जेव्हा तुम्ही बोलता, but it's not true की ते लोक भांडत नाही. They do fight a lot. Especially Italians, it is a very very romantic language, but when they fight it is crazy, and with all hand gestures flying everywhere. You have to watch it. So तसं नाहीये, पण yes, there are languages जे खूप sweet असतात आणि बोलताना पण you can you feel like you want to listen. Even accents काही like Italian, if you hear somebody speaking, you want to be like, okay, yes, keep speaking, it sounds really nice. So आहेत असे languages नक्की आहेत.
धन्यवाद, खूप छान.
अरुण काका, तुम्हाला काय विचारायचंय?
हो, मला एक असा प्रश्न मनात आला की पोएम्स म्हणजे कवितांची भाषा वेगळीच असते, तर आता त्याबद्दल तुम्हाला काय अनुभव, म्हणजे दुसऱ्या भाषेतल्या कविता कधी वाचण्याचा प्रयत्न केला आणि त्याच्यात म्हणजे तुम्हाला अर्थ समजण्यात काही कठीणाई आली की बरोबर अर्थ समजू शकला? जसं तुम्हाला फ्रेंच सगळ्यात फ्लुएंट आहे समजा, तर तुम्हाला फ्रेंच कविता कळणं खूप सोपं झालं पाहिजे किंवा काय, त्याच्या कवितांविषयीचं काही सांगू शकाल?
सो पोएट्री त्या लँग्वेज मध्येच जी ओरिजिनली क्रिएटेड असेल ती इझी टू अंडरस्टँड असते, पण जेव्हा ते ट्रान्सलेट करते त्याचा मिनिंग कुठेतरी इट गेट्स लॉस्ट. You cannot have this, fantastic creativity to that level because it's an artistic capability जी सगळ्यांमध्ये नसते. आणि मोस्टली जेव्हा ट्रान्सलेशन्स होतात ना तेव्हा आता फॉर एक्झाम्पल इफ मी ट्रान्सलेट करत असेल तर मी पोएट्री किंवा सम लिटरेचर नाही करायला जाणार बिकॉज आय डोंट हॅव दॅट एक्सपर्टीज. पण whereas I will go for a business, technical or a media translation, कारण मला त्याच्यात सब्जेक्ट मॅटर नॉलेज पण पाहिजे. सो असं कोणी ट्रान्सलेट केलं पोएट्री जे स्वतः पोएट आहेत आणि खूप लँग्वेजेस बोलतात, देन डेफिनेटली यू कॅन. देर आर सम व्हेरी ब्युटिफुल पोएम्स जे ट्रान्सलेट केलेले आहेत आणि यू कॅनॉट टेल की हे ट्रान्सलेटेड पोएम आहे. पण इट हॅज टू बी द राईट पर्सन आणि इट्स अ व्हेरी नीश एरिया टू ट्रान्सलेट पोएट्री आणि लिटरेचर, आणि खूप हायली स्किल्ड पीपल असतात फॉर दॅट.
कारण तो भाव पण यायला पाहिजे, नुसतं वर्ड टू वर्ड ट्रान्सलेशन, इमोशन्स आणि भावना त्या खूप महत्वाच्या आहेत.
अदरवाइज इट विल बी लाईक दॅट कोका कोला और पेप्सी.
आणि पोएट्री मध्ये काही काही सांस्कृतिक रेफरन्सनी शब्द निवडले असतात, तर ते तर करणं अशक्यच असतं.
आणि काही काही लँग्वेज मध्ये ते नसतात पण रिप्लेसमेंट. सो इन दॅट केस मग ते थोडंसं चेंज होऊन जातं मिनिंग, कारण ते एक्झॅक्टली रेप्लिकेट नाही करू शकत.
नक्कीच.
थँक्यू.
अजून कोणी? गीतांजली, तुझे क्वेश्चन्स मी कव्हर केले. अजून काही शिल्लक कोणाकडून काही प्रश्न?
मी विचारू?
हा, बोला का. बोला. तर
बऱ्याचशा लँग्वेजेसचा बेस असतो तो सुरुवातीला आपण म्हणजे चित्रकला ह्याच्यातून निर्माण झालेले लँग्वेजेस आहेत. म्हणजे जसं आपण कारण चित्रकला ही अशी की त्याला कुठलीच लँग्वेज लागत नाही. तर अशा लँग्वेजेस कुठल्या जास्त आहेत की ज्याच्या चित्रांवरून निर्माण झालेल्या लँग्वेजेस आहेत? एक चायनीजमध्ये थोडंसं मला जाणवतं की तशा आहेत. तर आपल्या मराठीमध्ये तसे नाही आहेत, किंवा अशा कुठल्या लँग्वेजेस आहेत का की ज्याला म्हणजे तुम्हाला त्या कॅरेक्टरमधून किंवा तुमच्या बोलण्यामध्ये तसा काही वापर होत नाही, म्हणजे पण असं चित्रकलेवरून इन्फ्लुएन्स झालेले लँग्वेजेस तुम्हाला कोणत्या जाणवल्या?
सो एक्झॅक्टली चायनीज सारखं नाही, बिकॉज चायनीज मध्ये एव्हरी कॅरेक्टरला एक मिनिंग असतं आणि तो वर्ड असतो आणि त्या ड्रॉइंग मधनं यू कॅन टेल की हा शब्द आहे. सिमिलरली आय वुड से ग्रीक मध्ये थोडंसं, not exactly like Chinese because Chinese is a unique one, पण ग्रीक मध्ये थोडंसं त्याच्यासारखं हे वाटतं. not in Polish, Russian, ते पण थोडेसे स्क्रिप्ट डिफरंट लँग्वेजेस आहेत, पण त्याच्यात नाही. सो फार मला जेवढे लँग्वेजेस माहितीये अपार्ट फ्रॉम चायनीज इज जस्ट ग्रीक, ज्याच्यात थोडंसं ते, पण इट्स नॉट एक्झॅक्टली की बिकॉज ड्रॉइंग येतं म्हणून इझिली ही लँग्वेज लिहिता वाचता येईल किंवा शिकता येईल, तसं नाहीये.
ओके, गुड.
अजून कोणी?
भूषण, नंदकुमारजींचे 2 प्रश्न होते. नंदकुमारजी असतील तर त्यांना विचार. नंदकुमारजी आहात का?
नाही, बहुतेक ते ड्रॉप झाले. त्यांचा एक, मला वाटतं एक प्रश्न घेतलेला आपण, आता असेल दुसरा ऍड केला.
आहेत नंदकुमारजी
आहेत. ओके, नंदकुमारजी बोला.
विचारा नंदकुमारजी, विचारा.
नाही येत ते, नाही येत, मला वाटतं ते ड्रॉप झाले.
आय थिंक त्यांचा एक प्रश्न होता की विच वॉज द इझिएस्ट लँग्वेज फॉर
करेक्ट.
तू आय थिंक इटालियन म्हणालीस ना तू की?
येस. आणि पुस्तकांविषयी सुद्धा होता त्यांचाच प्रश्न. सो अजून कोणाला काही प्रश्न? नंदकुमारजी आहात तुम्ही, काय अजून प्रश्न आहे का तुम्हाला काही?
मला वाटतं केळकर काकूंचा एक संस्कृत भाषेविषयीचा एक प्रश्न होता. केळकर काकू असतील तर.
हा, तेच आमच्या दोघांचा होता. संस्कृत भाषेबद्दल विचार असा होता की संस्कृत भाषा ही आपली ओरिजिनल, म्हणजे जगाच्या ओरिजिन पासूनची भाषा आहे असं आपण समजतो, पण ती आता लोप होत चालली. याचं कारण तुम्हाला काही मिळालं का? म्हणजे असं जाणवलं का की त्याचा वापर का केला गेला नाही, किंवा तो कमी का झाला, असं काही जाणवलं?
तो वापर का केला नाही, आय वुडंट बी द राईट पर्सन टू आन्सर, पण कमी झालाय नॉट रिअली, कारण अ लॉट ऑफ लँग्वेजेस संस्कृत वरती बेस्ड आहेत, एस्पेशली यु नो दोज जर्मेनिक लँग्वेजेस, आणि त्याचं खूप इन्फ्लुएन्स आहे ऑन दोज लँग्वेजेस. सो इट, म्हणजे जेव्हा ते लँग्वेजेस कोणी शिकतं आणि त्यांना जर संस्कृत येत असेल, इट इज इझियर टू अडॅप्ट ग्रॅमर वगैरे सगळ्यामध्ये किंवा प्रोनाऊन्सिएशन्स मध्ये, आणि इनडायरेक्टली ते यूज होते. पण डिरेक्टली आय थिंक बिकॉज इट्स नॉट अ लँग्वेज जे आपण डे टू डे मध्ये वापरतो फॉर स्पीकिंग, किंवा संस्कृत इज नॉट अ बिझनेस लँग्वेज डिरेक्टली कुठे वेअर यू सी इन बुक्स ऑर इन मॅन्युअल्स, म्हणून इट इज नॉट ॲज पॉप्युलर इन टर्म्स ऑफ अ लँग्वेज. पण देर आर सो मेनी थिंग्स दॅट आर बेस्ड ऑन द लँग्वेज, त्याच्यामुळे आय डोंट थिंक इट्स anywhere close to the extinction levels. It will still continue to be popular for anything that is on the research front background madhe, karan all old scriptures were related, and now people are coming back to, you know, Indian roots and how Indians from the past have done all of these things. It is definitely going to gain popularity, but in terms of studying it as a language, kiva additional language, foreigners studying Sanskrit, that's a proportion is lesser because it's not a spoken or business use language.
आय थिंक एक प्रश्न आहे की गिनीज बुक मध्ये असा रेकॉर्ड आहे का मॅक्झिमम लँग्वेजेसचा?
आहे, it's 56 languages written, spoken आणि हे understood, पण somebody has I think 80 plus languages just spoken record मध्ये. I have a long way to go.
नाही, तुला काय खूप अजून म्हणजे थोड्या दिवसात, थोड्या वर्षात आय एम शुअर यू विल रीच 50 तर तू सहजच पोहोचशील. आता तुला 44 येतात. यू आर नॉट व्हेरी फार अवे. आणि त्यासाठी तर आम्ही विश यू ऑल द व्हेरी बेस्ट. आणि अजून काही प्रश्न असतील तर
अजून कोणाला काही प्रश्न?
कदाचित माझा व्हिडिओ चालू होत नाहीये, पण मी एक आशिष बोलतोय. माझा एक प्रश्न असा आहे की हे तू सगळं जे करतेस ते सिंगापूरमध्ये असल्यामुळे तुला किती ऍडव्हान्टेज झाला?
सो सगळे लँग्वेजेस मी स्टार्ट केले टू लर्न इंडियामध्येच असताना. आणि मग सम वाईल आय वॉज traveling or working in other countries. Singapore मध्ये आल्यानंतर Chinese was the only language ज्याला exposure झालं. But like I said की they limited use होतं because people just go to the native market and we are so close to China compared to earlier if I was based out of Europe. आणि म्हणजे every day use साठी हे languages like because of Singapore kahihi difference padat nahi, or if I'm in India or anywhere else. The only difference is that if I'm in Europe मला more opportunities असतील or in the US versus Singapore. Current Singapore is more like a hub for Asian languages and that's really not my area of expertise compared to the others. And localization as an industry is not so developed. So like I said, I'm doing that Lock Lunch, Kiva Women in Localization, which I started just 2 days ago. I'm trying to spread the word. There is no community today. Even students, they don't know kai karaycha, even though they've studied languages. So we collaborate with some universities. We're doing with collaboration with NTU, with SUS and NUS to try and expose those students to what are the opportunities after they study translation Kiva languages.
So how do you keep in touch with so many languages? म्हणजे तू दररोज कोणाशी गप्पा मारतेस का? कारण बोललं नाही तर मग थोडं विसरायला होतं ना लँग्वेज.
So mostly work-wise तर बोलणं होतंच कोणाशी तरी. आणि नाहीतर through all these community forums वगैरे I joined like every possible. जसं I organize तसं there are other people जे organize करतात. मग मी ते attend करते. So sometimes it's not even about speaking. Even if you listen for like 10 minutes, you get used to that speech.
टच राहतो. नक्कीच.
I think nowadays social media helps in that.
Yes, definitely. And like a quick course, like through an app, if you feel like you're not in touch, you go to the advanced level and then you're done.
Refresher course करायला लागत असतील अधूनमधून. नक्कीच.
मी अजून एक तुला विचारणार आहे म्हणजे की मागाशी तू हाय हाऊ आर यू बऱ्याच भाषेमध्ये बोलून दाखवलं. तर तुझ्या मताप्रमाणे वाढदिवसाच्या शुभेच्छा कुठल्या भाषेमध्ये सगळ्यात गोड वाटतात?
I would say in Spanish it's Feliz cumpleaños, and then you sing happy birthday, Feliz cumpleaños a ti, Feliz cumpleaños. So it's very sweet, and the way they sing it also, like the tune of that song is very sweet.
The Feliz Navidad पण खूप famous गाणं.
Exactly, yes. Is it your birthday today?
No, not mine. But maybe actually it's a very nice way to greet, in some
Yes.
Again, once again, आपल्या मंडळ हे गेले 26 वर्ष उभं आहे ते एका छोट्याशा भाषेच्या बंधनावरती उभं आहे, मराठी भाषेच्या. आणि मराठी मुलींना एवढ्या 44+4 म्हणजे 48 लँग्वेज मध्ये प्रावीण्य मिळवणं, इट्स अ प्राऊड मोमेंट फॉर अस. आणि तो अजून जास्त आम्हाला प्राऊड मोमेंट आहे. सगळ्यांच्या वतीनं मी तुझे आभार तर मानतोच, पण तुझा बेस्ट विशेष पण देतो. अजून प्रियाताई तुम्हाला काही इफ यू वॉन्ट टू से फ्यू वर्ड्स?
नाही, तेच म्हणजे एवढी अचीवमेंट अगदीच थक्क करणारी आहे आणि एवढ्या लहान वयात. कारण म्हणजे 40 आम्ही 1-2 भाषा, एक मराठी बोलताना सुद्धा एक इंग्लिश शब्द, थोडा हिंदी, सगळं ऍक्सेंटचं काय विचारूच नका. तर 44 भाषा म्हणजे खरंच इट्स माइंड बॉगलिंग. आणि खूपच छान. तुला खूप शुभेच्छा आमच्या सगळ्यांकडनं की आता वर्ल्ड रेकॉर्ड जवळच आहे तुझ्या, खूप लांब नाहीये. तर आय एम शुअर यू विल अचीव दॅट. आणि आशिषजी अजून आभार प्रगट करतील इफ यू आर डन विथ द सेशन.
सो वेनेवर आपण जेव्हा लाईव्ह मीडियम मध्ये जाऊ, म्हणजे जेव्हा आपला इव्हेंट होईल, नक्कीच सगळ्यांबरोबर तुला भेटायची खूप इच्छा आहे. सो वी लुक फॉरवर्ड टू दॅट. आणि तोपर्यंत सगळ्यांना स्टे सेफ. प्रियाताईंची तर तू कॉन्टॅक्ट मध्ये आहेस. बाकी मंडळ हे खूप मोठं आहे इथे, मराठी परिवार पण खूप मोठा आहे. तुला कधी वाटलं की तुला मराठी तुला घरच्यांशिवाय अजून कोणाशी बोलता येत नाही
तर आमच्याशी बोल.
आमच्याशी कधी पण तू आम्हाला कॉन्टॅक्ट कर, आम्ही तुझ्याशी मराठीतच बोलतो.
नक्की.
ओके, गुड. थँक्यू सो मच.
ओके, धन्यवाद. थँक्यू.
धन्यवाद.
Thank you so much for having me.
थँक्यू. थँक्स संकेश्वरी.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Very nice program. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.